All right, welcome everybody to today's Solar Consultant Monday Forum on November 7th. So happy and excited to have you all here. If this is your first time joining us for a Monday Forum, we are the Solar Consultant Network. What we're out to do is help all of you. We're here to really help unite the solar industry, to share insights, and that way we can go ahead and take on the utility companies and we can be more successful in our sales careers. I couldn't be more excited than to announce our very special guest today. He's been featured in Forbes, USA Today, Yahoo Financing. Jeremy is just incredible. I know quite a few people of you that are on here right now that have used his sales programs to really take your solar sales next level. During his 17 years in his sales career, he has been the top producer out of more than 100 million salespeople worldwide. So, Solar Consultant Network, I hope you have your pen and paper ready for us to learn today from Jeremy Miner. Jeremy, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good, Melissa. Thanks for having me on. So yeah, that was during my 17-year sales career before I retired after about 17 years and kicked back for a while, figured out what I was going to do, and then started 7th level about 4 years ago, training sales professionals pretty much in every industry. At this point, we're in 158 different industries. Solar is one of the top probably 25 industries we train. So know quite a bit about your industry. We train thousands actually in this space now at this point. So lots of fun. Thanks for having me on.
Great. Well, I think what we're going to do today is kind of keep it a informal interview style. Sure. If you know, as always, folks, if you have something that you specifically want to ask, feel free to drop it in the chat bar, but definitely give us a little time and process to go through the interview questions because we might get your question answered there. So let's just start off with the big question for you, Jeremy. What do you feel are a few of the biggest mistakes salespeople, entrepreneurs make when trying to sell?
Well, I think there's several. I think one that comes to my mind when you ask me that question, especially in solar, whether you go door to door, whether you take inbound leads, or maybe you call outbound leads, is I think a lot of salespeople have been trained that for some reason, the more excited you are when you start talking with the prospect, that somehow the prospect is just going to be excited back. And there's actually, it's quite interesting when I hear that, because I'm like, interesting. Like, so if a salesperson approached you, let's say that you're going to a car dealership, right? And that's kind of instant used car dealership. We train lots of car dealerships, so no pun intended. And the salesperson comes out and is really, really excited that you're there, and starts telling you about all the great things about their dealership and how excited they are and how they have the best deal in town and blah, 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 blah. Typically, what do? You kind of emotionally shut down, right? But somehow we think in our minds that if we're excited to the prospect, that somehow they're going to be excited. Now, here's what I mean by that. Because when I say that, when I'm training events, people are like, oh no, Jeremy, like I've got to be excited. Like if I'm excited for my product there, and if I have that conviction that it's the best, that's going to come across, and the prospect is also going to think the same thing. Okay, let me make a suggestion to you. I want you to be excited about what you sell, but we have to keep that internal, because the moment it becomes external, especially in the beginning of any type of sales interaction, whether you're going door to door or you're calling a lead or you're on Zoom or in the home, it doesn't really matter. Your prospects start to emotionally shut down. And here's why. So my background, I went to school for behavioral science and human psychology. And here's one thing we all have to understand, which is very important. Within the first 7 to 12 seconds of any interaction you were with a prospect, just so you're aware, your prospects are subconsciously, we can't even help it as a human being, picking up on your verbal and nonverbal cues from your tonality, your body language, and what you are saying and or asking that triggers their brain to react in one of two ways. Number one, if you come across aggressive, like overly excited, you come across needy. Now, you know what I mean by that, don't you? You come across needy, and you come across especially attached, and you don't understand the right questions to ask. You don't understand the right tone. It actually triggers the human brain to go into what's called fight or flight mode. Who in here has heard of fight or flight mode? Okay, you've all heard of it, but do you know what triggers it? It's not like the prospect just wakes up and is like, okay, when I talk to a salesperson, I'm going to go into fight or flight mode. Okay. So it's what we're saying and asking that triggers their brain to react that way. And that's when you knock on the door and within the first 10 seconds, the prospect says what? Oh, solar, we're good. We already had somebody come by. We're not interested. Right? How many of you get that? Okay. Or when you get on, let's say, an inbound lead, right? They booked on your calendar. They must be interested. And you get on there and you ask a few questions and they say what? Hey, can you just get to the point? I don't have much time. Can you just tell me how much this is going to cost? Just tell me what this is all about and I'll tell you if I'm interested. That's because you're triggering fight or flight mode. Does that ever happen to anybody on here? Okay, let's all be real with ourselves. I know it's happening to every one of you, isn't it? Okay, now, once you learn what we're going to show you, we're going to give you a little glimpse today. We're going to give you a few little nuggets, okay, a few little hors d'oeuvres, little nibbles, all right? When you learn how to come across more neutral, unbiased, like you're not quite sure if you can even help yet because you don't know anything about what's going on. You come across more collective, and especially, here's the key word, detached. Write that down, detached. And you understand the right questions to ask and when to ask them with the right tonality, which is equally as important. It triggers the brain to become curious enough where they feel like they want to engage. They want to open up to you because they feel like you might have something important. They don't know what it is yet, but they have a different feeling. So we have to learn how to come across more, I would say, detached from the expectations of quote unquote closing the sale, hashtag, get rid of the commission breath, and really instead focus on whether there's a problem to be solved or not, which by all means we know there is pretty much with every home, right? Now, we all know they have problems. Okay, we all know we can help them, but your prospect doesn't believe that in the beginning because you're a salesperson, you're biased, right? So do I mean when you get on a call or when you get on a doorstep or when you get into a home or when you get onto a Zoom with the prospect that that your goal is not to make the sale? Well, hell no, I don't mean that at all. Your goal is to make a sale on every one, or at least move it forward towards that decision, okay? But you have to keep that to yourself. Because the moment they feel like you're just there trying to sell them is the moment they do what? They emotionally shut down. And even the very best questions that you've been taught how to ask, the prospect stays what? Surface level. You get 1 or 2 or 3 word answers. And then at the end of the presentation, they say what? Sounds good. Can you leave me some information? I need to think this over. I need to talk with my spouse. I need to talk to my financial advisor. I need to talk with my grandma in Wyoming. I need to talk with my uncle who lives in a van down by the river. I need to keep doing more research. I need to keep getting more quotes. How often does that happen to each one of you every day? Okay, well, there's a reason why it's happening. And once you learn the reason why it's happening, then we can do what? We can learn how to not make that happen. And that's when selling becomes really, really easy and really, really profitable. Melissa, are you with me on that?
I am. That is so great. What about everybody else? Drop it in the chat bar. Does this sound like something that you do? Do you trigger those flight or fright moments? Drop it in the chat bar. What are you guys feeling? Yep. Barry thinks that Jeremy's listening into all of our consulting.
Oh, I know what you guys are doing. I know it like the back.
Oh, all day. Everybody's saying yes, yes.
I know it like the back of my
head too, because I get really pumped up about things.
Yeah. So we want to obviously, hey, I want all of you to be excited about what you do, right? You help a lot of people. You help them save money. You help them after, depending on what you sell, what type of program, after 25 years, paid off. They don't have a utility bill. They're now on Social Security, limited income. They don't have to worry about this bill that's probably been going up, 5 to 10% or more every single year for the next 25 years. And there's a lot of things you can help people with. But if we're not able to efficiently communicate with them, if we're not able to trigger them to go below the surface, because that's where the sale's made, and they don't buy, well, whose responsibility is that? Theirs or yours? It's ours. It's our sales ability that's holding the prospect back from really getting what they want and solving their problems. Now, once you start to take responsibility, right? Instead of like blaming the leads, oh my gosh, my leads are so broke, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's broke that I talk to. Well, not really. just the way we're communicating. Because everybody write this down. I want to do an exercise with you. Okay. I just did this at a keynote a couple weeks ago. Everybody write down 2 problems that your prospects that you talk to have.
Feel free to drop it in the chat bar, everybody.
Yeah. Write it down or drop it in the chat bar. 2 problems that your prospects have. So write down 2 problems that your prospects have. Problems, time and money. No, like what problems do you solve? What are their 2 problems? Why do they need solar? What are the 2 biggest problems that your prospects have? I'm not saying, but like they don't have time to sit down with you. That's not a problem. Like, what are the problems that your solution solves? What are the 2 main problems? Now, if we don't know that, we're in a lot of trouble. Okay, I'm just being blunt with everybody.
There we go. Now we've got the wheels turning. Now.
Hi, Bill. Could that be a problem? Good.
Yeah,
okay,
rising
so you
cost
guys are
of
getting
energy.
it. You're getting it. Oh, their problems are they need a new car. No. I'm talking about the problems for solar. Like, what are the 2 biggest problems? High bill, inflation, right? So inflation's not going away. It's just the bill's going to keep going up. It's not like it's just going to magically go back down to what it was 2 years ago, right? Does anybody think that that's going to go down? Okay. Now, so you see the 2 problems that your prospects have. Now, tell me in the comments, does your solution solve those 2 problems? Does your solution solve those 2 problems? Tell me in the chat if it does. Well, if it doesn't, you're in trouble. Of course it does, right? So here's my question for each of you. If your prospects have problems and your solution solves those, then why are they not buying from you? What's the missing link? Can I make a suggestion to all of you? It's not your leads. It's not your mindset. It's not that you don't journal enough. It's not that you don't take cold showers. It's not that you don't meditate in the morning. It's not that you don't listen to rocky CDs before you go door knocking. It's not that because you don't get pumped up before you make your calls. That has nothing to do with it. It's not that you don't even work hard. Who on here works hard? Type in the chat if you work hard. Okay? Because if I asked you, do each of you want to triple the sales that you're making right now, which would triple your income, what would each of you say? You'd say yes if you want to triple your sales.
You'd be saying, sign me up.
Okay. Now, also in the chat, tell me if you're already working full time, if you can triple the hours you're working right now. Nobody can triple their hours. Okay, so if you want to triple your sales, you can't just work 3 times as harder. You're going to work 24 hours a day. So if you want to make more money, you have to do what? You have to increase your sales ability. There's no other way, right? Because it's what you're saying and or not asking that's triggering the prospect to run the other way and not purchase from you. So once you learn the right things to say, once you learn different tonality techniques that actually work with human behavior, once you learn the right questions, what can change for you? Everything can change for you at that point. Melissa, I digress. What else you got for me?
That was brilliant. You know, one thing that I absolutely love about sales and learning from you is it's all about psychology. You know, it's pretty incredible. So you've got a really unique method called NEPQ. Can you go over a little bit about what that is and how is that different compared to traditional sales techniques?
Yeah, so my background in college was behavioral science and human psychology. But if you really break down what behavioral science is, this is what it is. It's the study of the brain and how a human being makes decision to go left or right, to go up or down, to do this or to do that. It's really persuasion, right? So check this out. According to behavioral science, there are 3 forms of communication. I would suggest all of you write these down because once you understand the differences in persuasion and where you are now in your current sales ability, even if you're doing good, even if you already make 10 grand a month or 15 or 20 grand a month, compared to what you could be at, it'll completely change everything for you. All right. So the first mode of communication, Melissa, if I were to ask you this question, let me ask everybody this question. This is called era 1 type of sales. I'm not going to give you guys a scientific term because it sounds weird. I'm just going to give you an image in your mind. If I said the word boiler room selling, what's the first image that comes to each of your mind? Type it in the chat. If I said the word boiler room selling, what's the first image that would come into your mind? First image, car salesman, too much. Has anybody ever, Wolf on Wall Street, right? That's what most people tell me when I say, they're like, Wolf on Wall Street, right? Yeah, so boiler room selling. So write this down. We are the least persuasive when we tell people things, or we attempt to dominate them, to prove that we're right, to posture them, to manipulate them, to push them into doing something we want them to do. If you've ever seen like the Wolf on Wall Street type of shows, where they're on the phones, hey, I've got a great opportunity for you. And then we talk about the features and benefits of what we do. And we push them and tell them why we're the best and why they need to buy from us and why they need to go with you. It's just like if you told your spouse that they really, really needed to do something for you, and then you keep pushing them, what do they typically do back? They push back. So when you push, human behavior says what? They push back. Does that make sense? All right. So here are a few examples of the least persuasive way to sell. Presenting. Oh my gosh, Jeremy, no, I have to give this long presentation. I have to show them on my slide deck and spend 60 minutes going over how we have the best this and the best that. And here's our corporate headquarters. And we've got the best quality of service and the best rates and blah, 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 blah. Which, by the way, doesn't every salesperson say they have the best product or service? Doesn't every single solar company in your industry say they are the best or the number one company? All right. Now, let me give you a suggestion. Your prospects actually psychologically trust you less when you say things like that, or you talk down about your competitors. Why? Because they're used to every single salesperson who's ever sold them anything from a vacuum cleaner to a car, to a home, to anything saying what? We're the number one company. So you automatically sound like everybody else, okay? According to the data, it's not very persuasive if your presentation is more than 10% of your entire sales conversation. Now, here's the problem. On average, in any industry, including solar, I love you guys, but including solar, the average salesperson presents about half of the time. And that's a problem. Telling your story, if you want to make a lot of money, it's a problem. Telling your story, hate to tell you this, nobody cares about your story when you're selling one-to-one. Whose story do they mainly care about? Yes. Their story, novel nonsense, I can't believe it, right? Giving a sales pitch, we've all been taught you got to give a great pitch. According to the data, very low on the persuasive poll. Who in here watches Shark Tank on CNBC? Anybody watch Shark Tank? Now, you notice the entrepreneurs come out there and they start pitching to the sharks. Next time you watch that show, when the entrepreneurs come out really excited about their wonderful idea, I want you to watch the body language of Mark Cuban, Damon John, Barbara, Mr. Wonderful, Kevin, and all the other guests on there. Watch how they're like, whoa, hashtag ditch the pitch. That's trademarked. Hashtag ditch the pitch. All right. Putting sales pressure on them. Do you do that? And here's the big one, assuming the sale, especially early in the conversation, according to the data, very low in the persuasion poll. Okay, especially if you sell something like you do, that then takes a while to actually get installed. Because then what's going on in their mind over that next few days or week or 3 weeks or a month before it gets installed? A lot of people cancel, okay? There's a reason why they are, all right? Now, how many, be real with me, don't hold anything back. How many of you use these techniques or were taught how to use them? And be real with me. It's not your fault. You were forced to learn those, right? We were all forced. Anybody? Few people, everybody's holding back. Not gonna admit it that they're forced. Okay, that's the first mode. Now, the second mode is more known as consultative selling. That's the second era of selling, consultative selling. We've all heard that word. We're more persuasive when we attempt to have a discussion, okay? Consultative selling primarily came out in the 80s, several different books. One of them is a book called Spin Selling by Neil Rackham, college professor, never sold anything, by the way, but he taught that you needed to ask logical-based questions to find out the needs of the client, which that seems to make sense. But what's the potential downfall of the approach when you only ask logical-based questions? We call those surface-level questions. Well, your prospect is going to give you what type of answers in return? Surface-level answers, logical-based answers. And do human beings buy on logic or emotion? All emotion, right? Everybody's heard that. We've all heard that. Brain studies show it's 100% emotion. So here's some consultative questions that you never, ever want to ask. Okay. Now, most people don't ask them in your industry, but sometimes I hear a few people do. Never ask a prospect. So John, tell me this electric bill that you have, what is that keeping you awake at night? What keeps you awake at night? What's your two biggest challenges that keep you awake at night? Okay. Don't ask those type of questions. Or what are you looking for in a solution? It's too surface level. Okay, those type of questions, or what site, what type of this or what type of that. All right. Now, who in here was taught how to ask surface level questions to find the needs of the client? See, it's more persuasive than boiler room selling, where you're manipulating them, pressuring them, but you're still having to play the numbers game because what? Because they're not going below the surface. Very little emotion is brought out by simply asking logical based questions. All right. Now, here's the third mode. This is where it gets interesting. The third mode of communication is called dialogue. So that's era 3. And write this down. We're the most persuasive when we allow others to pull us in and persuade themselves. Okay. When we ask what are called neuro-emotional persuasion questions. That stands for NEPQ. NEPQ, somebody said, NEPQ. Now, the question people always ask me, it's like the $1 trillion question. We don't talk in millions or billions anymore. We're talking trillions, I guess, right? How do you get a person to persuade themselves? Can you just knock on the door? Can you just get on Zoom and say, hey, go ahead and persuade yourself? And by the way, here's how we enroll you, and here's where we're going. No, you have to learn specific skilled questions and when and how to ask them in a step-by-step structure that sounds natural, not scripted, that gets your prospects to pull you in and sell themselves rather than you trying to do it. Okay. Melissa, does that make sense? Am I boring everybody?
Definitely not boring. I can't think that we can write down fast enough. I know I'm going to have to listen to this recording over and over again. It's great. Good stuff. Everybody getting that? All right. Good stuff. So let's ask another question here. Oh, this one. I know all of you solar people love to talk about objections and how you overcome objections, right? So Jeremy, what do you think about preventing objections versus overcoming them? Can you elaborate on that?
I think there's a combination, but what a lot of salespeople don't understand is they're actually triggering the majority of the objections they're actually getting. It's not like the prospect just has all these objections already in their brain. And when they see you, they just, oh, I'm going to go to objection A or objection B, or which one should I do? Those are triggered reactions. You're triggering the very objections that you're getting. Now, why would a prospect say at the end of a conversation, after you showed them all the logic of all the money they're going to save and they're not going to have an electric bill after 25 years, why would they then say at the end they want to think about it? Who on here knows why a prospect would say that? I can tell you, because what you've done is you haven't learned how to take the prospect below the surface. And because your questioning ability sounds scripted probably and sounds surface level, your prospects are giving you surface level answers in return. And because you're not getting them to bring out their emotions, because you're not building a gap from where they are, we call that their current state or current situation, compared to where they need to be. We call that their objective state. Now, what's the gap in between? The gap in between can only be is all these newfound problems that your prospect now sees they have that they didn't really know they had before you knocked on the door, before you got on Zoom with them. Okay. Now, how can that gap be made in their mind? Not by you telling them what their problems are, because you know that's going to do what? Go in one ear out the other, right? You're biased. You're the salesperson. You knocked on the door, but your questioning ability allows them to tell themselves these newfound problems that they didn't understand they had. So the bigger that gap is in their brain, that is determined by your questioning ability and your tonality ability, will determine the urgency for them to act now, not push it down the road. Because if a prospect says, I want to think it over, is that an objection? Does a prospect just sit there for 3 weeks, writing it all down? Let me think about this. If I did this, if I did that, and they do all these like calculations. Does anybody think your prospects go back and do that when they say that to you? No, they say they want to think it over. They lie to you because you've triggered uncertainty in their brain. They lie to you not because it's their fault, because it's whose fault? Because we haven't learned how to take them below the surface. We haven't learned how to trigger what's called their emotional drivers. They get them to see how bad these problems really are that maybe they didn't even understand they had in the first place. Okay. And because we didn't get them to see that, they have uncertainty in their mind. And when a buyer has uncertainty, what do? They don't buy because they're uncertain. And because they don't trust you yet, because you haven't learned how to get them to view you as like an expert or a trusted authority, they lie to you and say, I want to think it over. But we all know that's not the objection, right? The objection is behind that. Why are they wanting to think it over? That's the objection. Do they want to think it over because they don't want to get a loan? Do they want to think it over because maybe they don't feel like they have time? Like give me somebody some reasons in the chat why a prospect you think wants to think it over. What's the main objections why a prospect would say, I want to think it over, that they're not telling you? Listen, you tell me.
Oh, I think when they say that, it is purely because we didn't answer their questions. We didn't get them going and things like that. It's just, that's their little excuse.
Sure.
Anytime I hear them say we want to think it over, I'm like, I did something wrong in that whole thing.
Yeah, so it's a downstream issue, but let me give you a Band-Aid approach, okay? Because like I said, if you can't get from them what the real objection is, it's over. Because how many of those people that said, I want to think it over, really get back to you? Give me a percentage. 2%?
It's low. You got to play the stupid follow-up game, drip them on emails and things because they weren't ever ready.
So here's what we have to do. We have to practice, and I'll write it here on this board. Can everybody see this real quick? I'll throw this here, okay? So we have to practice what's called the ABDs of selling. That stands for always be disarming. I don't mean cutting their arm. Disarming means, how do we get the prospect to let their guard down and tell us the truth of what's really going on in their brain? Has everybody in here heard of the ABCs of closing? Okay, throw that out the window. That's what average salespeople do in our day and age. Look, in my sales career, in my 17-year sales career, I averaged almost $3 million a year in commissions. And I was a straight commission salesperson like you. Okay. One of those was door to door. One of those was B2B. The other two were B2C industries. Okay. Do you know what the average salesperson made in those industries I sold in? They're making 50 grand a year. How was I making 50,000 commissions every week? Well, it's because I knew how to disarm the prospect. I knew how to trigger them to let their guard down and open up to me. All right. So let me give you an example. If the prospect says, and we'll talk about objection prevention for a second, but I'm going off on a tangent, but I'm here. We got to follow through because I know everybody's waiting. So the prospect says, I want to think it over. Here's what you say. First of all, you agree with it, because my first thing I have to do is get them to what? Let their guard down, because I know if they won't tell me the real objection, it's over. So if I start, well, why do you feel like you need to think it over? I mean, look, you're going to save X amount of dollars that you're going to do. What does the prospect do to you back then? Well, I know it's just a big decision, but give us some time, call us back in a week, a month, a year later, and then they go MIA, right? And you start chasing them, texting them, emailing, calling them, and they never what? Get back to you, okay? So that's because you're triggering them to put up more of a guard when you start using rebuttals. Because when somebody uses a rebuttal with you and tries to prove that you're wrong, what do you typically do back? You push back. Now, you're going to get a few people like that, but you're not going to get like our clients get, which they get most of the people like that. Okay. So rather than getting 1 out of 10, why not learn techniques how to get 5 or 6 out of 10 that say that to you? You make a lot more money for sure. It's a lot more funner. Okay. So when they say, you just say, yeah, that's not a problem. So you just agree with them. Yeah, Jeremy, this looks really good. I just need some time to think about it. It's a big deal. Yeah, that's not a problem. What's your time frame on getting back to me in the next day or two, just to see if I'd be available for you? Well, I don't know. I could call you back in a couple of days, maybe next week. Well, I don't know if I'd be randomly available like that with my schedule. What I can do, if it helps you, is if you have your calendar handy, I can pull up mine and have you book a specific time with me That way you don't have to chase me down and vice versa. Would that help you? And then I book the appointment. Now, gasp. Why would I just agree and book an appointment? Why not try to respond to that objection right there? Can anybody tell me? I have to get their guard down, right? Now, I'm not going to leave before I do that. But by me saying, what's your time frame on getting back to me in the next day or two to see if I'd be available, what does that do in the prospect sign? They think I'm about to leave, right? They think I'm about to get off Zoom. They think I'm about to get off the phone. They think I'm about to leave the home. They think I'm about to leave the doorstep, wherever you're selling to them. I'm getting them to let their guard down. Because if I can't let their guard down, there's probably no sale because they won't tell me the real objection. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, I want you to see what I did there. There's a couple techniques you might have missed because I just randomly went through that. I didn't like share a screen or something with you. So why would I say, well, what's your time frame on getting back to me just to see if I'd be available? Just to see if I'd be available. What does that imply? Melissa?
That implies that you are a very busy person and
busy.
not just waiting around to sell solar or cars or whatever.
I must be helping a lot of people. So instantly that triggers more value. That triggers more status in their brain of my value. Okay, that's called a status frame. It's a little bit of a status frame. And that's a whole nother subject. If we have time, we'll talk about building your status in the prospect's brain from the first words out of your mouth to the closed, everything. Now, then a lot of times they'll say, well, I don't know, I'll call you back in a few days, a week, a month. And then you can't have them waffle because you know that's not, they're not going to call you back in 2 days or a week, right? So you say, well, I don't know if I'd be randomly available like that with my schedule. What I can do if it helps is if you have your calendar handy, I can pull up mine and have you book a specific time with me. That way you don't have to chase me down and vice versa. Would that be appropriate or would that help you? That way you don't have to what? Chase me down and vice versa. Now, what does that do in their brain? We keep building more status. That way you don't have to chase me down. We're flipping the script there. Make sense? Okay. Then you book a time. Now, right when they think you're getting off Zoom, or right when they think you're leaving the home, or right when they think you're leaving the door or the phone or whatever, you do this. Now, hey, Mary, before I leave, what were you wanting to go over in your mind, just so I know what questions you might have when we talk on Monday? And whatever they say there is the real objection. Does that make sense? Now, hey, so instead of saying, well, what do you need to think about? Well, I don't know. It's just a big decision. See, they're not going to react to that. It's too blunt. But if now I say this, you got to say it the right way. Now, hey, before I leave, see, they feel like I'm still leaving, right? Now, hey, before I leave, what were you wanting to go over in your mind, just so I know what questions you have when we talk on Monday? Well, Jeremy, I'm just not quite sure about. Well, Jeremy, this is just a big decision. I don't know if I want to get a loan because I'm about to get a new house. And whatever they say, that is the real objection. And would you rather know what the real objection is there because you're still there and can help them overcome it? Or would you rather just hope and pray they show up in 3 or 4 days? I think you guys know the answer. Any questions on that?
So let's say now you've got them to that point. They go ahead and let you know. Now, are you jumping back in? Or are you?
Yeah. Now I'm going to help them overcome. Oh, I see. And then whatever the objection is, then you're going to address that objection and then go and close them again. And if you still can't close them, which you should be able to close them 7 or 8 out of 10 times at that point, if you've started the conversation the way we train you all the way to the end. Now, if you just like always closing, manipulating, pressuring at the end, try to do that. It's not going to work as effective as what we would teach you for sure. Not even close. All right. Because they won't let their guard down to somebody who they feel has like been trying to pressure them the whole time. There's a big difference there. Okay. So at the end, then we're going to be there to help them overcome that. And then it's called a reframe. And then we're looping back around and we're going to close them again. Okay. I can't tell you how many times in my sales career, and especially the clients we train in your industry that use that, like when they get an objection, which is very rare these days from what we train them, because we teach them mainly how to prevent objections, which I'll show you how to do that in a second. If they do get objections, like they get excited because they're like, whoa, I haven't got one all week. Okay. It's a little bit of a different feeling, right? Now, let's talk about preventing objections. Okay. So like I said, most of your objections that you get are triggered by words you use and your tonality. Okay. So let me give you a few examples. Like if I said, okay, you're getting to the end, you're getting everything, and you're like, okay, I just need you to go ahead and I just need you to sign up, go ahead and sign the contract here. Now, you're like, well, yeah, I have to have them sign the contract. But if you're aware, those are two words that typically trigger sales resistance in quite a few buyers' brains, because a contract is something that locks them into something that maybe they don't want. But if I just reworded that to say, just need you to authorize the agreement, it means the same damn thing, but it's far more neutral. So I'm just showing you like a few different examples. These are just random. There's a whole lot of other examples like this that most salespeople have no idea what they're saying is triggering the prospect to run the other way. It's triggering the prospect to throw out objections. It's triggering the prospect to say, I need to think it over, okay? So everyone's okay with, okay, so I just need you to authorize the agreement that gives our technicians permission to actually come out and install the panels so that you can start saving money in your electric bill next month. Authorize the agreement so you can what? Repeat back what they said they wanted. Do you see how I'm getting them to authorize the agreement and gets them to what? Save money in their electric bill. See, there's a reason why. If I just said, I just need you to sign the contract here, triggers resistance to a lot of people. Any questions on that? That's just a little example there. Melissa, do you have anything on that?
Oh, that was great. Yep.
I mean, take a look at this. Let me give you another example. The government does a really good job at this, okay? Take a look at the IRS. It stands for Internal Revenue Service. Revenue? If it was called Internal Taxing Service, which is what it is, we'd all be up in arms. But the term revenue is far more neutral than the word tax, right? Do you see what I just did there? I mean, the government does really good on this, okay? So if you hear certain words in the conversation that are signs that your prospect is possibly going to have an objection when you go through the presentation, that means you need to ask certain questions to seed in their mind to eliminate said objection. Make sense? Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, Melissa, do you have something else for me?
Oh, that you're doing so great with everything. Thank you so much. And you've been nailing all the questions that keep coming in here. So somebody did have a question on what kinds of questions they could ask. I'm trying to scroll back. It was at the beginning of like those important questions at the beginning to get them emotionally in.
Okay, well, let me give you a breakdown. Okay. So typically, here, hold on. Maybe I can do something that will help all of you here. 1 second. Let's see if I've got like a...
Because I think everybody's getting it. And now they're like, oh, crap. I've been asking all the wrong questions. Shoot, what do I do?
What do I do? What's going on? Okay, let me do this. Can I share my screen real quick?
Yeah, they're thinking, oh, God, I'm triggering the croc style of the brain. Yeah, you should be able to share screen.
The reptile part of the brain, reptilian part of the brain. That's what they're triggering. It's fight or flight mode, 100%. Okay, so let me give you an overview. Now, this is just something I had here random from a keynote. So just ignore all this. But so from the very first part of any conversation we're in, so I don't care if you're a door-to-door salesman that sells solar. I don't care if you take inbound leads that sell solar. I don't care if you take outbound leads that sell solar. Okay. The first part of that conversation, we have to learn up here at number 1, what are called connecting questions. Connecting questions take the focus off you and puts it on the prospect. Okay, I'm just giving you an overview here real quick. I'll give you a few examples after we get done. Situation questions, number 2, help you and the prospect find out what the real situation is, because I hate to tell all of you, your average person that you knock on the door does not sit around on the weekends in between football games they're watching and think about, oh my gosh, my electric bill has been going up 4.3% per month for the last 2 years. And, you know, in 25 years from now, when I get on Social Security at that rate, there's no way financially I'm going to be able to even pay that bill. Does your average person sit around thinking about that? Highly unlikely. Okay. So your situation questions help you and them start thinking about those type of things, not by telling them. We tell them one ear out the other. You're biased. You're the salesperson. You just knocked on the door. You got on Zoom with you. And we're trying to sell them something. They know that. Okay. So not only does it help you find out what the risk situation, but more importantly, it helps who find out the risk situation, the prospect. Okay. Then after that, we're going to, right below that, we're going to go into what are called problem awareness questions. Now, problem awareness questions start to build the gap. Remember? So we help them find out, here's where they are. Here's their electric bill. They don't have a choice usually, depending on what state you sell. Here's where we have to build a gap that opens up the emotional door to find out what their real problems are, what the root cause of the problem is, and how is the problem affecting them and or problems. Solution awareness then, once they start to see and feel what their real problems are, okay, by certain questions you ask, you then go into what are called solution awareness questions that get them to see what their future is going to look like once this newfound problem or problems are actually solved. Once they're lowering their bill, once they don't have a bill, after, it's kind of like renting versus owning the home, they start to see all that in their mind. They feel it, okay? Right after they see what their future is going to look like, once that's in, we then want to rip that away from them with what's called a consequence question that helps the prospect question their way of thinking and explore the consequences if they don't do anything about this newfound problem. What are the ramifications? Okay. And then we're going to move into step 3, the transition. We're going to transition into our presentation. Okay. We're going to go over how their problems, how we actually solve their problems that they mentioned to us and what that means to them. And then at the end, instead of closing, we're going to ask what are called commitment questions that get them to commit to take the next step and purchase what we're offering. Does that answer their question?
Yes, that was fabulous.
Now that's an overview. Now, as far as like individual specific questions, I'll give you a few examples. I know we don't have a lot of time here, but let's say that you have an inbound lead. Okay, so they book on, some of you guys do that on here, right, Melissa? Some of them do inbound. Okay, so it's obviously different if you're door to door. You're not going to start off like this. But let's say they book on your calendar. They have a meeting with you right now at 4 p.m. or whatever specific standard time. When you get on there, what do most salespeople do? Hey, Melissa. Hey, thanks for joining me. How are you doing today? How's your day going? Don't say that. Don't ask that question. Do you know why? Because every single salesperson that has ever tried to sell them anything starts off with what question? How are you doing today? And I can pretty much assure you, the data shows that your prospects, for the most part, don't believe you really give a damn about how their day is going, right? When a salesperson asks you how you're doing, what typically goes through your mind? Get to the point. Why are they asking me this question, right? They know you're generally not interested in how their day's going. So when you say things like that, guess where they put you? Salesperson trying to sell me something, and they start to emotionally shut down. Okay, so you want to get right into it. Now, you don't just go right into a pitch or anything crazy like that, but if you're on with Zoom with them, you've probably got notes. Okay, so Melissa, thanks for being on with me today. So it looks like you had booked on the calendar about looking at possibly different ways to save money on your electric bill every month, right? Now, why would I say that? I'm starting to do what? Looks like you booked on the calendar about looking at ways, or about possibly looking at ways to save money on your electric bill, right? Why would I say that at the beginning? I'm leading why they booked on the calendar so they could, what? What's the end result of what we're selling? Save money on their electric bill. They're like, yeah, that's right. Everybody say, yeah, that's right. Now, if I just said, okay, it looks like you booked on the calendar about looking at going solar. Well, maybe I'm just kind of looking at the different options. But if see, here's what we have to understand. You're not selling the thing. You're not selling solar. You're selling the results of what that thing does for them. You're selling the results of that, not the thing itself. Does that make sense? You're not selling them freaking solar panels. You're selling them the result of what that solar does, which is lower their payments and give them basically an option after 25 years, more than likely, depending on what you sell, to not have a payment anymore. That's what you're selling, okay? At the end of the day, all right? Now, here's what we do. Okay, so it looks like you had booked on the calendar about possibly looking at ways to save money on your electric bill, right? Yeah, right. Okay, good. Yeah, and I would say, the first part of this call, it's pretty basic. It's more for us to find out, I would say more about like who you're using now, like what your usage looks like what type of rates you're getting compared to what you're wanting that to be, to see kind of what that gap looks like, to see if we can help. And then, towards the end of the call, if you feel that it might be what you're looking for, we can talk about possible next steps. Would that help you? Now, what did I just do there? Those are just examples of a few connecting questions at the beginning, okay? And then towards the end of the call, if you feel that it, what's the keyword? Might be what you're looking for. We can talk about possible next steps. Now, why do I have to be very neutral there in the beginning? Why not just say, hey, then towards the end of the call, if you really like this, and if you're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for you, we'll show you the next step and how to sign up. Why wouldn't I want to say that? Why wouldn't I just want to assume that?
You don't want them going on that defense.
Because it triggers sales resistance if I assume, especially early in the conversation. What's my goal in the beginning? To disarm the prospect. So notice the words might be, possible next steps. Those are neutral words. Nobody's going to say, nope, it would not be appropriate to talk about possible next steps. They're not going to say that. They're going to be like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Now, hey, I was curious though, like when you saw the ad on Facebook where we were talking about X and Y and Z, what, because there's a lot of solar ads out there. What was it about the ad that attracted your attention? Well, I'm just looking at it and I was like, okay. And what were you hoping to get out of the call with us today, just so I have a better understanding? Well, I'm hoping to understand the deep, this and that. See, those are examples of what are called connecting questions for your industry. Okay. There's obviously a lot more after that, but hopefully that answered that person's question. Okay. I think we're almost out of time, right?
Yeah, that was great. So a couple things here. I don't know if you've been able to watch the chat, but a lot of people have been posting in here about your course, the NEPQ course, worth every penny. Help me achieve. My goodness, you have a lot of people that have absolutely loved your course. So this is a great time that I want everybody to know that as part of the Solar Consultant Network here, that Jeremy is offering a really special discount code for us with that code. Leslie, if you could go ahead and drop that in the chat bar. This is huge. He's going to give us 66% off.
I just found out about this right before I got on. I don't know. I think you guys negotiated with our vice president or something. And I'm like, what? Okay, I guess. Okay, yeah. So yeah, if you guys want to sell more of what you're selling to your prospects, if you want to eliminate most of the objections you're getting out, because I apologize, just 45 minutes. It's not enough time to go through all that and know what questions to ask in every situation. And like, what do you say when the prospect says, solar, we're good, or we already had somebody come by, or we're not interested, or is this solar? Like, we didn't have time to go through all that. So if you want to acquire those type of skills, like our clients are, I think some of our lower performing clients in your industry make 30 grand a month. Most of them are making 40, 50, 60, 70. We've got salespeople in your industry that make over 100,000 a month that when they started were making like 3 grand, 5 grand, 8 grand a month. So if you want to acquire those same skills to make that type of money, I guess they're giving you a discount. I think it's the NEPQ 2.0 platform they're letting them in for. I think normally normally people pay close to 3 grand for that.
Yeah, Ramsey just pointed out that he paid $3,000 for the deal. So he said that's a deal, but yeah, 66% off. And you guys can see the code in there. Very important. That code we negotiated will be good till this coming Sunday at midnight PST. So I know a lot of you are watching the recording of this, so know that you have it until this Sunday. The other thing, if you guys are not part of Jeremy's Facebook group, he has over 37,000 people that are part of it. So that means it's a really good group. You want to make sure you're part of that. Leslie, if you could drop his Facebook group in the chat as well.
Yeah, in the Facebook group, we give you little nibbles. They're not really industry specific, but they're little nibbles, different hors d'oeuvres, little nibbles. Come up to the fish tank to get the nibbles. That's what I always call it. So we go live in the Facebook group 2 or 3 times a week, different Q&As, different training. Like I said, we train 158 different industries. Solar is in definitely the top 25% that we train now. So if you want to acquire those skills, it looks like they're giving you 60-some% off. I think they lowered it down to $794 or something like that. So if you want to take advantage, you want to acquire the skills, you want to be like our clients who are selling what you guys are, that are making, well, just to put it bluntly, a lot of money. But more importantly, they're helping a lot of people. And that's what they like doing. So it's a lot of fun to help a lot of people, because when you're able to help a lot of people, you get paid a lot of money, right? And just think about it. These people 25 years from now, when they don't have a bill, who do they have to thank that for? You. But if they do have a bill and they're on limited income, whose responsibility was that? Ours. So once we start to understand that it's our responsibility and how we're communicating with our own sales ability, it gets real. right? Because your prospects have problems. Your solution solves those. What's the missing link? It's acquiring the right sales ability that works with human behavior, that triggers your prospect to want to engage and want to open up. And imagine if almost every prospect you talk to actually engaged back and opened up, where your income would be at this point. So that's available for you. And that's a good place to start as NEPQ 2.0. Okay. Melissa, thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
Jeremy, it's been just such a pleasure having you on here. You guys want to drop in the chat or come off mute and tell Jeremy thank you. You know, I love seeing all of the interactions happening. Everybody wants to also know where the recordings. This is always could be found on our Solar Consultant YouTube channel. It'll also be found. We'll post it on LinkedIn. We'll post it in the Power Pioneers, and we'll post it in the Facebook group for the Solar Consultant Network.
Yeah, and have them join salesrevolution.pro. That's the Facebook group, salesrevolution.pro. They can go there too.
Okay.
Hey, Jeremy, I know this was really short, but I got a lot of value out of this in a short amount of time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. No problem. Sorry, we didn't have more time. Wish I had more time.
Yeah, great information. Now we have to reprogram ourselves.
Well, right. So let me describe it how our clients describe it. Anybody seen the Matrix?
Yeah.
Right now, until you're in like our advanced training programs, you have been taking the blue pill. Once you get into our advanced training programs, you're going to see once you take the red pill, it's extremely hard to ever go back to taking the blue pill. I will tell you that. You will feel very uncomfortable doing it at that point because you're going to finally see how your prospects view you. And once you understand that, it's pretty much impossible to go back, which is a good thing because you make about a lot more money. Okay.
Thanks.
That was incredible. And
Thank you.
I love the Matrix. So
Grateful.
now I'm going to think about pills here, people.
Okay, everybody. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks,
All right,
Jeremy.
everybody. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
See you then.